Can you biohack your life? How can you live longer? How well is India prepared for the silver surge? Top doctor, longevity hacks and myths busted. The only 8 life essentials you need.
Some people call them longevity essentials 8. Some people call them the lifelong essentials 8. The life expectancy difference is 24 years.
Dr. Shitej Kapoor exclusive.
So I'd like to ask you about precision medicine, and particularly in the context of cancer patients in India, and also the use of artificial intelligence and how a diagnosis has changed and how treatment has changed over the last few months or so.
Yes, well, you're raising a number of issues. So let me break them down into two things because they're separate. One is precision medicine, which existed before artificial intelligence and will continue to do so. And the other is, of course, what will artificial intelligence do for health? So let me first explain what precision medicine is. Because for a very long time, we've always been making a diagnosis and offering a treatment. That was just medicine as usual. We used to call it evidence-based medicine, that you make the correct diagnosis and you treat. So what changes in precision medicine? What changes in precision medicine is that a diagnosis, like breast cancer, gets broken into smaller entities. So at one level, someone has breast cancer, but then when you do the section of it and when you do the genetics of it, you realize that there are, let's say, 4 types of breast cancer. They look the same, the symptoms may be the same, but you realize that either the person's genetics or the cancer's genetics are different. And then the treatment is targeted based on that. And the point of doing that is that you get better outcomes. Now, this is not as yet available for everything. It is available certainly for certain cancers, particularly for breast cancer, but also certain other cancers. But for some very common diseases, as people have blood pressure, diabetes, we do not as yet have precision medicine. But the hope is that this principle of using your genetics to guide your treatment across a big diagnostic category like blood pressure or heart disease will lead to better treatments. And we hope that they'll keep coming.
When you talk about precision medicine, I think affordability is obviously going to be a big concern there. How expensive, if you could I'm not asking you for numbers.
Can I give you a scary figure? The latest new medicine that has come for a brain disease called metachromatic leukodystrophy. The name doesn't matter. A single treatment for one person for that disease costs $4.5 million US. So look, this is ridiculous. No person can afford it. Even in the United States, where it is being offered, it is only offered in the context of insurance. And the only reason the insurance companies can afford it is because it is a very rare disease. Now, almost by definition, what happens in precision medicine is that the number of patients for whom that drug can be used is smaller. So you see, if I'm saying that we're breaking up a big disease like blood pressure into smaller segments, almost by definition it means that if I develop a drug for this condition, it'll apply only to a small people. So therefore the economics for the drug companies then mean that their drug can only be used in a smaller segment. What that automatically leads them to do is to then raise the price to make the research and development worth it. So at one level, you're getting much targeted treatment. At the other level, the cost of developing that drug per person goes up. Now, 4.5 million is a ridiculously extreme example. But yes, precision medicine is getting costlier. You hope it is getting more effective. So what you're hoping is that in the fullness of time, the cost-effectiveness ratio is still good. But time will tell.
When it comes to India right now, what a lot of people are looking at is not, diagnostics, just diagnostics. They're going in for like a blood test once in every 6 months, but more like something that can predict how healthy will you be in the future. And that's why AI, artificial intelligence, comes in, and predictive health is being offered. Again, it's an expensive treatment for many Indians will not be able to afford it. But do you see predictive health as the future of healthcare as well?
So the question is, can we, based on your genetics, can we, based on knowledge of your lifestyle, make predictions? Absolutely, we can. Some of these things are very simple. If I just ask someone a question about the family history of diabetes, I can actually make a prediction that if their parents both have diabetes, they have an 8 to 10 times elevated chance of having diabetes. So at some level, even before the new predictive medicine, just by asking questions, we could actually make predictions. Now we're doing detailed genetics, and then pairing that genetics with a lot of other tests. Our ability to predict has definitely gone up. The question is, can you change the outcome? And there the answer is still emerging. Because two things happen. Once we know that you have a very high risk, we can't change your genes, so that can't be changed. What can be changed is lifestyle factors. So what is being found in the early, this is still early, in the early development of predictive medicine, is that you are able to predict. You can even tell people about the things they should modify. But the modifiability of those things, or if you flip it the other way around, do people actually go and modify those behaviors? Do those people actually go and modify their diet for any length of time? Because the predictions might come in that eat less meat, don't drink, have 5 vegetables a day. And when you look at the evidence, people do it for the first week, then less over the next month, and then they go. So are we able to predict? Yes. Potentially, if people change their lifestyles, would that lead to improvement in health? What is the evidence at large scales that people change their behaviors because of predictive medicine? It's in the early stages.
Very interesting. I also want to ask you something that we've been looking at very closely. I don't know if it is okay to call, instances of forgetfulness, dementia. A lot of people joke about it as well, But do you think that early onset of dementia is a reality and that a lot more people are getting affected by it? What are the reasons and what can be done? Because I think a lot of people have these questions about how can I prevent it? Can it be prevented?
You're right. So first is early onset of dementia a reality? Yes, of course it is. It's almost by definition. So usually everyone doesn't get dementia, but people who get dementia, things like Alzheimer's disease, often the age of onset would be around 70 plus. And after 70, with every extra year you live, the risk that you might get Alzheimer's keeps rising. And some people think that in some databases, by the time you reach 90, that number might even be 1 in 4. So first of all, it's a common thing that happens, but usually the risk starts rising 70 onwards. Now, there is a much smaller subset of people who in their 50s and 60s start developing the same disease, and that's what's called the early onset of dementia. If the question is dementia in general creeping earlier? Like, are people getting dementia earlier and earlier? No, there's not much evidence that that is happening. What is happening is that our detection systems are getting better. So previously, many people who have real early onset dementia might just have escaped diagnosis for 5 to 10 years. They might have gone from one post to another pillar without really getting a diagnosis. Now, as systems are improving, better tests are coming, MRIs becoming more widely available, someone will nail it earlier. But we don't have much evidence that dementia itself is getting younger and younger in a way. Now, what can you do to delay dementia? Look, the honest answer is we don't know. But there are some modifiable risk factors. So the biggest thing is that one modifiable part of dementia is dementia that's related to blood pressure and strokes. So the degree to which you take care of your cardiovascular health, you are actually decreasing the chance, not of Alzheimer's disease, that's one kind of dementia, but the vascular dementia, which is the dementia because of changes in blood supply to the brain. So anything that improves your heart health, taking good care of your heart, in some sense decreases the chance that you'll have vascular dementia. So that's certainly something modifiable. Then, to tell you the truth, almost every day in the newspaper, you'll see an article saying, exercise delays the risk of dementia. Crossword puzzles delay the risk of dementia. 2 cups of coffee decrease the risk of dementia, and next week it'll be 2 cups of coffee increases the risk of dementia. Honestly, I'm also in the age group now that I think about these things. I think my advice would be just generally healthy lifestyle. At this point in time, there is no specific evidence that doing crossword puzzles a lot, if you haven't done it in the rest of your life, is suddenly going to change your dementia. So what are the things? So the things that matter, smoking. Essentially, it's not less, no smoking. Alcohol, minimally low. Beyond minimally low, it's hard to say what's the safe level. Diet, as per the usual dietary guidelines of healthy health. Very important, sleep. And the other thing that's very important is social connectedness. Now, often it's within family, but within community. But it's generally seen that people who are conforming to all of these things, and then of course taking care of their heart health and diabetes, which are the other 2 risk factors that you can do something about. So that's on the medical side, that you do with a doctor, but the rest of the stuff you can do at home. And I hope somewhere there I said exercise. Yes, you did. So regular exercise, a good diet, no smoking, minimally low alcohol and no more, good sleep, and social connectedness. And the last part is mental health. There is strong evidence that people who develop things like depression in their 50s and 60s have a higher chance of dementia in the next decade. So the degree, now, you can't just prevent depression if it's coming your way, but you can certainly detect it early and get it treated.
Since you spoke about depression, I also want to ask you, in India, as we know, it's a big taboo. It's like we don't discuss it. We don't talk about it. It's brushed under the carpet, and what should be done? Because the awareness levels are low and there's a stigma attached to it. So this is a huge concern.
Yes. So I think the first thing, there is a sense that, in India we don't talk about it, but the rest of the world everyone talks about it. This is just a matter of time. I've had the privilege of being a psychiatrist in 4 continents. I've seen it in different ways. In the 1980s, even in the West, people did not talk about it. This issue of stigma was alive and well. The way it changed there is some very high-profile politicians, journalists came out and talked about their depression. And that's what gave people the license to talk about depression outside of the family and to call it that. Previously, people gave it all sorts of different names. So the first thing is the stigma to this has been universal. It changes. In the West, I would say the change has been much greater, but not entirely gone. But there have been some high-profile incidents, politicians, sports stars who've owned up to their mental illness. But people, when they see that, yes, these people had mental illness, but they still went on to perform. Exactly. It just changes the way. So I hope that journey will happen in India too, but it'll take time. The other journey is the young people. The young people everywhere around the world, because the young people, by which I mean the generation of social media, they're much more connected to an international dialogue than the generation who are now in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. because while we got social media, we didn't get it while we were formative. For the young people, the language they speak is pretty international about issues of mental health, and they are much more open to it. So I think this will change, particularly amongst the educated class, particularly amongst the class that is linked to the world's social media. And then, of course, the real challenge will be that when we start understanding, appreciating, exposing the scale of these issues, then you need interventions and treatments. And that is a big challenge.
My last question to you has got to do with this worldwide obsession about longevity. India is also doing a lot of work in this direction, including AIMS. I want to ask you, how do you look at this issue? Is it realistic? Is it normal to want to live beyond 100? And in India, while we have an aging population, the concern is about the quality of life once they are past 70. That's also a big concern, because living long is not enough. Living healthy years is more important, I think. So what
do I think, sir? Well, I'm also now in the age where I'm thinking about longevity. So let's put this in perspective. The average life expectancy around the 1950s used to be 50. In India, probably even slightly lower than that. The world has seen huge increases in life expectancy. And in the West, after the Second World War, so 1950s, life expectancy just kept increasing every decade. It just kept increasing to where it got to about 80. And for the last 7-8 years now, it is stuck. Life expectancy in the United States is actually decreasing. Modestly so, but it's going down. In the UK, plateaued, slightly decreasing. Australia, the same. So this march to just getting older, this is despite all the developments in precision medicine, all the developments in cancer treatments. So the first is, in the West, life expectancy is now plateauing. So this idea that we will all move to live to 100 is becoming a little tricky. So that's point number one. The second thing that's becoming clear is that spending more and more money on precision medicine is not going to change the life expectancy of populations. Obviously, for the single person, it makes a difference, but no one has found anything that can, through these medical interventions in a disease, dramatically change. The things that dramatically change life expectancy through medical interventions are really public health interventions, and ideally done at the younger stage. When you're a child, it has to do with vaccinations, nutrition, etc. Once you're past 40, what can make you live longer? Now, there are many studies that have followed people from 40 on and tried to figure out what's the secret to living longer. And the secrets actually were, in some sense, what I just told you. Now, of the things you would do to avoid dementia, those exactly are the same things. Some people call them Longevity Essentials 8. Some people call them the Lifelong Essentials 8. But those are those very simple: no smoking, minimal amount of alcohol, regular exercise. You have to take care of your blood pressure and diabetes, but then not everyone has that problem. If you're taking care of those Life Essentials 8, and this is important for your listeners to understand the magnitude of the impact. So let's say someone gets all of those 8 right, and someone gets all of those 8 wrong. In other words, I'm not saying they're alcoholic, but they drink a lot of alcohol, they smoke a reasonable number of cigarettes and things like that. The life expectancy difference is 24 years. So these 8 simple things can have a dramatic impact. Now, I'm talking extremes. I'm talking someone who was 8 positive and someone who's 8 negative. Most of us are likely somewhere in between. The last one comes to, are there specific interventions? Some nutraceutical, some vitamin, or something like this which can change your telomeres, or it can change your chromosomes, and you live to be 105? No. And I think people should be very cautious, because I do see ads of this kind, particularly on the internet, and I'm particularly bothered by that, because I could see vulnerable people could land up spending a lot of time. I mean, most of these things I would say would be wasteful rather than dangerous, but at the moment there is really no claim that other than these sensible things that we've talked about, that there is anything that you could take with the express purpose of just living longer that works.
So biohacking essentially is a fad, something that Brian Johnson has been doing. What do you have to say about that?
Yes, look, I must say, I just have, before I call something a fad, I have to, of course, study it well enough to know. Now, look, I haven't.
Okay.
And honestly, I would say at the moment, it is a sci-fi concept. And we'll need much better evidence. There may be something to it, but the point is it's just not proven.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's just experimenting, I think.
Look, individuals will do amazing things.
Yes.
Everyone will know a grandmother or a great-great-grandmother who's lived to 106. And there are, in some families, where longevity just happens more.
Yes.
But, that's probably genetic or maybe what that family does in terms of lifestyle. But in terms of an intervention, can you start taking, I don't know, creatinine or something like that, which will make sure you live 5 years longer? No. But Life's Essentials 8? Yes.
That was a great conversation. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.